Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Beyond Access series. Tonight, we are here for part 2 of our executive functioning track, and we're here again with Dr. Bruce Wexler. Tonight, as in every night, you all have the opportunity to ask your questions using the Q&A function. We ask that if this is a question specific to your child, that you include some contact information in case we can't get to it, to the question during the session. That just gives us an opportunity to be able to get back to you after the session. We will be recording the session and we will be posting it on our YouTube page. If you haven't had a chance to do that, to look at that, go use the link, subscribe, and you'll get notifications from every time there's a new upload. At the end of the session, and I'll remind you all again in the session, you're going to get a link to a survey. We ask that you take a minute of your time to just fill out that survey and let us know your thoughts on the session. And really, we're looking towards those surveys to let us know how we structure future sessions. So we really do appreciate your feedback on all of that. One other update for those of you, I know folks have been asking about getting certificates of completion for this. We have partnered with parent universities, so you can use the DOE's parent university platform to go in and register for these sessions. And you'll be able to receive a certificate of completion for each session that says, you attended the session. So those, you can log into Parent University using your NYCDOE account. Those are a lot of updates, but and I'll share them again towards the end. But I just want to say a very warm welcome. Welcome back, Dr. Wexler.
Thank you, Jose. Everybody hear me all right?
We hear you great.
Okay, and am I going to be able to get my screen? Let me see. So can everybody see my screen now?
Perfect.
Good, because I can't see you all. So you'll have to occasionally I'll ask you to just confirm that you're all there periodically. And but you'll be able to contact me as part of the organizing committee if there's a technical issue, I know. So welcome back to all of you who are here attended my first discussion session about a month ago. And welcome to those of you who are joining this executive function series for the first time tonight. I am going to begin just a second here by reviewing what we discussed last time for those of you who were here and also for those new, of course. So what we're talking about are a set of cognitive functions that we call executive cognitive functions. And these are cognitive skills that are essential for managing your emotions, managing your behavior, and for learning. And they include such things as focused attention, self-control, flexible thinking, and memory. Now, if you pause for a moment and to think about this, you'll realize that these are skills we use and need all the time in many different activities. For example, to analyze situations, plan and take action, to adjust the actions, cognitive flexibility as needed to get the job done, to focus and maintain our attention, whether we're trying to learn something or work on something, and to switch attention if we have to pay attention to more things than one at a time, as often we do. And to control oneself, control one's emotions, control oneself in the context of things that might be provocative or make you angry or frustrating. To be able to remember what you're doing and how to do it, and to manage time. Now, each of those things, as we went over last time, many children who learn differently have problems with aspects of their executive function. And because of that, families are frequently aware of the manifestations and the challenges associated with these aspects of their child's executive function when it comes to the types of things I'm talking about here. Whether the child is able to remember what they're supposed to do, even what they're doing at the moment, and remember instructions, whether they have flexible thinking, whether they're able to manage their frustration or their anger. And what we talked about last time is that these issues impact the child's performance, your child's performance in school, and the way they behave and assume responsibilities around the home, often creating challenges for them, stress for them, frustration for them, anger for them, poor self-esteem for them. But what we talked about last time is that they're certainly not the only ones affected by this. You as parents are, and the parents, and you're not alone if you're affected by this. What we ended up with in the session last time was going over some research studies to show how common it is in parents who are helping their children who learn differently make the most out of their abilities and compensate for areas where they need to compensate. That's a big demand on parents, and that parents feel stress. Parents can feel incompetent themselves, depressed, and that stress and depression can then manifest itself, for example, in irritability in relationships with other members of the family, and it can challenge relationships with your partners in parenting. So we talked last time that that's the situation for the child, and that's a situation that you face as families, and those are challenges that you face. So last time we talked about the fact that it's important to recognize that this takes a toll on you, and also that there are things that you can do and need to do to take care of yourselves. And by taking care of yourselves, that's one of the first steps to being able to help your child more. And we included some examples of things you can do. Relaxation, like meditation, which we'll come back to again tonight. Making sure that you have some time for exercise. Making requests of your family members to have some personal private time for personal needs, and even a small amount of time, 15 minutes part of the day that you can have for yourself, or extra time for a bath or a shower or a walk outside by yourself. Figure out ways to take care of yourself. So those are the things we talked about last time. And we're going to talk about tonight now are ways that you can increase your child's executive function and have fun while you're doing it for both you and the child. And there are three types of situations we're going to consider. One is when your child is facing the types of challenges I've just alluded to, and you as families are facing challenges, what are some of the things that you can do? What are some tools that you can use to make those challenges easier for everybody and actually make them fun? The second category of activities are everyday activities that can be turned into opportunities for executive function development in your child. So I said how important executive function is, how it's involved in so many different things that we all have to do. That is, each of those then become opportunities to say, okay, let's make a little fun game out of the executive function demands that are going on right now in the course of life. And then lastly, we'll talk about some games that are just pure games that are fun and that are very good for improving executive function that you can do with your child or you can do as a larger family unit. I saw one question coming in the chat. Jose, anytime, please, feel free to interrupt me if there are questions that you think we shouldn't save. I'll stop after a bit, periodically, a couple times during the hour we have together, and pause for questions back and forth. But if some come in, Jose, that you think I should talk about, stop to address, that indicate that that there's information that's confusing. If there is anything for all of the participants that that's confusing, please put a question into chat, and Jose will stop me and address them.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. So do you ever have trouble with your children taking turns when you're doing something, or taking turns when you're talking, and getting them to listen? Are your children good listeners? Now, I ask that question knowing well that children with ADHD, for example, or children on the autism spectrum, or children generally who have less developed executive cognitive functions, have more trouble controlling themselves, sustaining their attention, and become impatient, and sometimes interrupt and have trouble listening. So here's a game that some parents have found useful. So let me describe it first, and then we'll talk more about why it works, why it's useful, and how we can make it more flexible to implement. So basically, you have an external prompt, a picture of an ear and a picture of a mouth. And the person has the mouth card. The person can only talk if they have the mouth card. And if they have the ear card, they have to listen. So why is that useful? Well, it makes a game out of it, but it also gives what we call an external device, an external aid for the child's executive function. They're not relying only now on the internal self-control mechanism. They actually have something external, physical, that they're holding in their hand, that they're looking at, that they can manipulate that way, that helps them support those internal structures that aren't yet developed as much, and then help them develop those structures. And you'll see as we go along, we can make them rely less and less on these external devices and more on the internal ones. So the simple start is you can only talk if you have the mouth card. And when you're holding the ear card, you have to listen. So you can make those cards any way you want, from some pictures, cut them out and paste them onto a card. But there are things you can do if that's difficult. If you can't find a picture, like if you don't have a printer, so you can't print down from the internet, or you don't have a magazine where you find a picture of a mouth and an ear that you can cut out, there are other ways to do it as well. You can choose any object to represent the mouth and ears. Now, I already consider this a more advanced stage of this exercise, because we're adding something that requires now cognitive flexibility in very basic ways. And it adds fun in a different way. So a banana can be the object that means you can talk, and an orange means that you have to listen. Well, whoever has a red hat can talk, and whoever has a green hat has to listen. So already now, see, the flexibility is that we're adding meaning, extra meaning to objects, and then we can play with that meaning. So a green hat doesn't always mean the same thing. Sometimes it means listen, sometimes it means talk. You can also use toys, of course. If you had a toy phone or something like that, you would rather use, or you could use a cell phone and hold it up, and that means that you can talk, and some other symbol for listening. But you get the idea here. And then you can let your child participate by choosing what objects they want to represent it. So now we have another level of executive function. We'll come back to this one too. You see, when your child is able to choose this thing, they're already thinking, oh, this is an executive function I'm using, they have to use, because they're thinking, oh, something can stand for something else. And then we can use that together as a tool. And then you can be silly if you want to make it fun. Probably already, I mean, the banana and the orange are pretty silly. And you can choose new objects whenever you want to mix it up and to have that cognitive flexibility. Both imagination and cognitive flexibility added here. So there are some other types of things. You could use a red traffic light is the listen one, right? So that's sort of like stop, you can't talk. And green is when you can talk. And then instead of a traffic light, you just use a red circle and a green circle, because that's somewhat more abstract from the concrete traffic lights. So you're going from something that has a more concrete nature of it to the more abstract. Once again, you let your child choose and have fun out of it. So then there's the next question. What are the rules of this game? You know, how is it that one gets to have the mouth or have the ear? And so they can be very simple first, and it just introduces this one step. If a person wants to speak and they hold the ear, they have to first say, excuse me, or use the word please, may I have the mouth? And when you can, that's already then one step above, right, of just interruption and unstructured ways to try and communicate. It already makes it much more structured, even if there's no other rule to it. They just have to ask and ask nicely, and then they get the mouth and they can say something, and then somebody else gets their turn. And you can make more than one way to ask for it too, that adds some more flexibility and some more memory. You can ask, excuse me, may I have the mouth? Oh, please, it's my turn. Will you give me the mouth? Anything like that. And then you can discuss the need for rules. So now we're already getting to the idea of rules, and rules are part of the way that executive function regulates our own behavior. These rules become internal to us, but now we're playing with them externally. And we can actually have a discussion. Why do we need rules, and what are rules? And you can let your child participate in developing new rules. Now you'll see during this presentation, if you see these two little red stars here, it means that these are particularly good for older children. Now we're talking middle school or high school as opposed to elementary school children. And the older children can consider the reason that we have rules. For example, you can have a discussion. Should everyone talk the same amount of time? And what are the rules? Should we have this other rule of fairness? Should everyone talk the same amount of time? Or on some topics, maybe some people should talk longer than others. So this is the type of way we go, just from having some structure with the mouth and the ear, understanding that then there have to be rules that we use and ways to use those rules politely, and that we can develop new rules, and older children can think about more complicated aspects of the rules. So the whole family can play this at dinner time or in the car, except perhaps for the driver. So now I'm going to switch to a different thing that, again, in the course of everyday life, areas that can potentially be problems for children whose executive function skills haven't yet developed that strongly. How do we do things there and make them interesting for us? So one is writing lists down. Now we all use lists, right? We call these external memory aids, but your children need to use those like external memory aids, and they may need to use them for many years if they have the types of challenges, developmental challenges that will make it harder for them to use some internal executive functions. Very important for them to get comfortable using external aids. And the simplest one is write things down, making lists of things. So we want to be able to also add structure and anticipating so that the children can anticipate what comes next. And giving them that external regularity and structure of routine helps calm anxiety and helps increase executive functions. Now, I mentioned at the beginning in reviewing last time's, the first talk in this series, how all of the challenges of children who learn differently have for themselves and for their families create stress and difficulty. This, in the context of the pandemic, that's all amplified, because you all know you're worried about a lot of other things now. And the more things on your mind, the more stress you have, the harder it is to deal with other demands like those that your children make of you. So all the more important it is to have ways that help structure and contain the general uncertainty and anxiety that we all face now. And regular schedule is part of that, and schedules that people can anticipate. So you write down a schedule for the day or afternoon or evening. And so people know what's to anticipate, even when we're going to do chores, or when we're going to do homework, or when we're going to have dinner. When we might have our relaxation time, when we might have a family game time. Start with very few things and then add more detail or longer periods of time gradually. Another general principle, right? We want to keep it simple, learn the concept of writing things down, and then show how we can add more things gradually to it. And we could use different colors to code different parts of the days. So would be a general schedule for what we're going to do. We can make a schedule on a weekend where we have more flexibility. What should our schedule be today? Once the concept of a written schedule is established. Another thing to use a schedule for is things to remember that you have to do in certain periods of time on a regular basis. So you know things to remember in the morning, right? That's a busy, hectic time, and you want your child to be able to help you with that and have a little checklist of things to remember. Again, we're writing things down to be external aids, just like holding the ear or the mouth is something concrete outside of us that we can look at, and it brings in other types of neural and cognitive mechanisms to reinforce, because we have not only what we're thinking inside, we can focus our attention on this thing that's outside. And not only do we have, if we have problems with our memory, we don't have to remember it all. It's right there in front of us to go back to and look at. Now, you may want to share with your children that the idea of checklists is one that's used all over the place for important things. Why does it take so long before the rocket launches, for the Mars missions? They have a huge checklist that they go through. What does a pilot have to do before they take the plane off? They have a huge checklist. They didn't used to have those, by the way, in the earlier days of aviation, but it makes flying, one of the things that makes flying so much safer than it used to be is checklists, so people don't forget. So things in the morning, let's start with just 3 things that you have to do in the morning. And you can pick those together with your child and say, what's important in the morning to remember? And you would like them to have that structure. And it could be, whatever you want, brushing your teeth, getting dressed, coming to breakfast, whatever it is. What do they have to have in their backpack for school? So this is relevant, of course, for children of all ages, but you can have a checklist. How often do children of all ages, even children who do not have any issues, particular issues with executive function, they're just children, how often do they forget to bring things home or bring things to school? Oh, I forgot my homework, I never brought it. Or I didn't bring the assignment home. When you come home from school, part of the schedule should be, let's go over what's in your backpack. What should you bring? What did you bring home? But they should have a checklist for what they should put in their backpack every morning and let them be in charge of it. I don't know exactly what your kids bring to school in the morning, but if in terms of snacks or food or homeworks or pencils or notebooks, whatever it is, but let them help you make that list and let them check it first. And now especially the older children can make the lists, and after they make the list, they bring it to you to check. And then you may be looking in the backpack with the younger children when they go over their list to show you that they've put the things in. And with the older children, you can just start to ask them, oh, did you check? And then you don't look. You're passing that responsibility on to them. So there's one more. Yeah,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So we have a couple of questions that I think are interesting. Going back a little bit to the mouth and ear game you were talking about earlier, how would something like this work with non-communicative autistic children?
Okay, well, how do they, a good question. And let me say that one of the biggest challenges for teachers and parents is to know where their child is in a particular developmental path on certain school skill sets, right? And what you want to is engage them in what is called the zone of proximal development, what is within their reach, but a little bit of a challenge. So the answer to your question is going to depend, on each child, but let's just take a child then who communicates very little. How do they communicate? I mean, they do communicate some. at some times. So that's what you have to start with. What is their preferred communication mode? And then you might have another symbol for it rather than the mouth or ear. And it may be easier for them if you have something concrete external that they look at. I don't know the answer to this. I'm just because I don't think there's been any research done explicitly addressing your question. But what I would suggest you try in terms of something that would be parallel to the mouth and ear game would be to find some symbol, some concrete thing that you think can represent their desire to communicate or the way that they communicate. So if they just want to communicate something, maybe they don't say it, but and they have trouble with it, but they want to. Maybe there's something they can pick up. So they haven't actually had to say it, you know, like a little flag or a sign, meaning they want to communicate something. So you've got to be creative. And let me give you a preview. What we're going to do in my next session, and I'll explain this more at the end of this one, is for you all to, it's called You Two Are the Experts, for you to send in, but to me directly, to my email at Yale, things you've tried, things that work or don't work. And I'm going to make a presentation out of your ideas and share them. So let's put that question out for everybody to think about, for example, who's had some experience with it. And if you try, the person who asked this question, any of these things between now and then, based on this evening, please let me know how it goes and we can talk about it again in a month.
Yeah, it almost seems like the important piece here is to find ways to let your child communicate, whether it's verbal or not, that they need attention and they're seeking for your attention, and they need an opportunity for them to have attention towards you. Kimberly Ramones, who's our Senior Director of Instruction and Compliance, is also on the line. Do you want to add anything to this?
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. I would also just add, in reference to that particular question, that the actions of turn taking and exchanging and other actions between yourself and your child that are not necessarily communicated verbally I see a lot of ways where some of the strategies that Dr. Wexler shared can also be done by viewing and watching, and the exchange of actions, gestures, etc., that serve as also another form of communication if not communicating actually verbally and with words. And so I just wanted to add that piece in, that I think those exchanges are also very helpful and can be very helpful with some of the strategies that have been shared tonight so far.
Oh, thank you both. Those are very good elaborations based on your experiences that you've got. It's nice to be having such other people on the call here, parents and NYC staff with such experience. Should I move forward?
Just two more questions
sure. Okay.
that I'd want to get here, and then we'll move forward and we'll answer it. But there's when it comes to addressing or sharing, like what are things that comes next? You know, we're doing this, but now next we have math, or next we have homework time. What do you do when children don't want to navigate to the next thing? What are strategies for that?
You could have another activity after it on the schedule that's very appealing, right? Because we talk about that. If you do this, then you're going to be able to do that, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that is one thing that we use. Again, I don't know how many parents use that, but you know, if you do this homework, then you can watch a TV show, or you can have something else that you like. But now if you put that on the schedule, it's even more concrete, and you show them outside. So the schedule isn't, you know, magic in solving that problem that you've described. But we're talking about how some of these external aids might make it easier. So then they can actually see, well, we got this part. And if you wanted to, you know, you can make the time allocated for the thing that they find that they don't want to do narrower and smaller in the schedule. And actually they see a bigger reward time afterwards, which it can truly be. But then afterwards, when you make the schedule for the next week, change the proportion a little bit. and compliment them that they've done very well with this. You know, they don't like that activity, but it's part of growing, and that's the rationale for it. And, you know, we all have those sort of things, but we all have our reward things we like more too. And here you see, you'll get them both. And right now we're going to make this part just a little bit bigger this time of the things that are harder for you to do.
Yeah, I noticed I was spending a lot of time with my nephew, and I noticed that like if there was some particular thing that I know he didn't want to do, I have to do some proactive planning and say, well, after this particular thing is done, we get to do
Right.
X, or we get to have this treat or whatever.
And that becomes internalized more when you've got the schedule, the concrete schedule, piece of paper. It's easier for them to have confidence in that, to see it and to learn it repeatedly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question before we move on, and I think you talked about this a little bit while you were wrapping up around checklists. A parent says that they've created checklists for their 17-year-old, but she puts them away.
Yeah.
How do you encourage her to use them? And I think you were saying something along the lines of, you know, at a certain point, at a certain age, children should be involved in creating those checklists.
Yeah.
And should be, you know, receiving responsibility. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and again, none of these things, I understand the challenges here that many of you face, and I'm not pretending that any one of these things is going to solve these types of difficulties, but it's a tool set we're trying to expand, you know, and that you can then try out. So yes, the first thing would be rationale. And so, you know, that's why I talked about, so they don't feel the checklist is demeaning, and that's why I talked about what they use for the space programs, what they use to make planes safe, is people have these checklists. And I don't know if you actually, you know, made yourself some publicly on the refrigerator or other places so that they can see they're not the only one using the checklist, if you know what I mean. We want them not to feel that it's demeaning and singling them out. Then the other thing is to engage them, as I said, in the process of making the checklist. And then you can put rewards to it too. You know, if the checklist is checked off, then there's some reward to it afterwards. So those are my thoughts, Hosea.
No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And we'll take some more questions later in the presentation.
Okay, good. So now we're talking here about other things that happen during the course of the day that are opportunities for executive function training. So putting away the clean dishes. If it's a dishwasher you have, or a dish rack, either one works, but let's just consider about a dishwasher. And the good thing about that is that it's very concrete, it's very limited, it's helpful, you know, they're contributing to the household, but it's executive function in a big way. If they're going to sort, they have to sort where things go. They have to think about the differences between, you know, glasses, plates, and silverware, the difference between knives, forks, and spoons, and where each one of them goes. Same thing with laundry. So here's something you can do at the same time, working in parallel. Have your child sort the laundry with you into piles. That could be different types of clothes or for different family members. When you go grocery shopping, ask your child to help you find the things you need to buy, especially things that you know that they like to eat, you know. Okay, so they're paying attention. We're having focused attention. And memory, what am I looking for? Sustained attention. So you're going down the aisle, where are those cookies that you like? You know, so they're looking for something that they want. You know, help me find those cookies that you like. And so they're now searching all the cookies. You get the picture. And then you're using categories too. Again, so have your child point to the things you need on the shelves and use categories to plan. Now we need to look for vegetables. And then you can say, what vegetables do you want? So this is a key part of executive function. And learning is the use of categories. Language itself is categories. Nouns are categories. What is a noun? You know, vegetables, food, clothes, those are categories. So we need some vegetables. What vegetables do you want? So they're using their executive function. And maybe sweeten it, you know, what should we buy for desserts? Now, older children can help you make the list. They can be the one carrying the list. They can be the ones checking things off. And they can also go off on their own. Okay, so we need to, let's see, what do we have here now? We need to buy, you know, some peanut butter. You know what type of peanut butter you like. And we need to buy some cookies. Which one do you want to get? And then let them go ahead by themselves. And now they've got a focused attention, they've got a mission, and they've got memory. And I can understand that for some children, that might be a bit scary. I mean, maybe they don't want to, but maybe you're embarrassed or worried that it'll be difficult if you're not watching them constantly. But those are risks that are worth taking. And again, it's your judgment whether a child can do it. With one of the older children, can they go off by themselves to the next aisle? And you tell them, and this is planning, you go around that way, I'm going to go up this aisle, we're going to meet at the end. And if you can't find it, I'll come and help you. So we're turning these everyday activities into opportunities to develop executive function. When you're in the car, you can play games. Like when driving in the car, ask to see who can spot or see some trucks first. So there's a category, there's sustained attention. Or make it more specific, or green trucks. So now you've got added response inhibition, self-control. When I see a truck, that's not good enough, right? So first we're just looking for trucks, but now I see a truck. No, but that's a blue truck, so I can't, it's a green truck I need. So right there, I mean, that's what we use. We use exactly that process. We use it in these computerized training games that we've developed to support executive function. It's just like that. The kids have to look for, tap on something. They have to look for something red that's moving on the screen and tap on it. That's all they do first, just tap it when it turns red. And then sometimes it turns blue and they're not supposed to tap it. So now you can see we've added another cognitive and perceptual demand, and including self-control. Because they see they've been tapping all the time when it changed colors. Now when it changes blue, they're not supposed to tap. So here they're looking for trucks, but a green truck doesn't count. And then you can change the color for flexibility. And if you want to add memory, say, okay, show me a green car and then a red car. So now they've got memory. They're looking for a green car, they're looking for a red car. All that can be fun, and you're helping those executive functions. And it doesn't have to be just cars. You can find and point to all different kinds of things. So again, we're exercising categories. And it could be types of, and flexibility, because we're looking for one thing. Now we're looking for different types of things. You can make them as specific or complicated as you want. And if with the older kids, I guess you can put in more style, right? For hats or jackets or stuff. I don't know the vocabulary there, but you probably do and they do, you know, right? There's certain types of hip jackets or styles or shoes to wear, and other ones that aren't. And you can ask them to find some, you know, some really cool ones and some really whatever the opposite word they use for not cool. So those are the activities of everyday life. Now we're going to turn to just games that you can play, but maybe we'll stop for questions again, Jose. If you think we should, if there are any, or you tell me whether you want me just to move on to just playing games. That
Well,
people,
I think that's a good, there's one question, I think that's a good pause. So going back to the conversation exercise you were talking about, you know, the mouth and the ear conversation. So can you talk a little bit about some techniques or some ways where parents can engage with children who might not pick up on social cues and know that it's time to move the conversation to the other person, or doesn't know how to reciprocate that conversation and just keeps going on and on about their special interests?
Yeah. So that's where you have, that's the beauty of it. You know, once they understand it, you have the most simple rule is, if somebody asks you for the mouth and you have the mouth, you have to give that to them. If they ask you nicely after, and you can just say a little while, but then you can make the rule more specific. If you want to, you can have a little timer and say, no, when somebody gets the mouth, they can have the mouth for this amount of time. You can have an hourglass with the sand goes down so you can see it, or you can put your timer on your phone up. And then after that, you can keep talking longer than that unless somebody asks you, because they want to say something, they want to turn, and they ask you for the mouth. And then when you've got the ear, you've got to be quiet during that time. You see, so one thing is, Jose, is getting them to stop talking, right? To give up the mouth. And you have to have some idea of a rule and a time. And then I said before, we can have some discussion about rules and change the rules and what should they be and why we need rules. But the basic idea is to start with a simple rule that you can say, whoever has a mouth, they can keep talking until this time passes. And then with anybody asks them politely with the right language, may I please, excuse me, may I please have the mouth, they have to give it to them. Then the next thing is they can't interrupt for those same kids. Jose, they're going to want to start talking again, right? They're holding that ear right in their hand and they're looking at that mouth that the other person has. And these are the external cues that hopefully will help them.
I think that's a really good point, and I think it's also maybe one of the more difficult things that we would struggle with, right? Is that the rules we make for our kids, we have to apply those same rules for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to model those things. So if we have the ear, as much as we want to interrupt and say, we have to observe those same rules that we're laying out for the kids, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the parent has to give the child their full talk time. Yeah.
I think we can go into games now and talk about some fun.
Okay, good. So here's a game for older kids. We're gonna have simpler versions of it coming down. But it's a game, 20 questions. You know, if everybody could show their hands, but maybe you think many people know a 20 questions game, Jose, or is that old school?
You know, I think most people will know what 20 questions is, but if you could
I'm going to go through it. Yeah. I will. So the beauty of this, so one person is thinking of something and people have only yes, no questions they can ask. So then you have all sorts, you have memory involved, sure, right after you ask a few questions. You have strategy involved and the general strategy and abstract versus concrete categories involved. All of that's built into this game. So because what you want to do, you know, the one strategy is it alive or not? You know, so then you're asking a most general question and then the person has to say yes or no. So you've already narrowed it down. And if it's alive, you can say, is it a plant? And then you get the idea. And then you can say, is it and they say no, then you can say, well, is it an animal? And they might say yes. So now with 3 of your questions, you know that they're thinking of an animal. And those questions, and if you have a group of you playing, you know, one person is the one who's got the object in mind, and the rest go around in a circle answering questions. And the nice thing to do with that, I mean, so you have to decide in your family whether it'd be easier for you just to play that game a little bit with one parent and the child whose executive functions you're trying to enhance, or whether it'd be better to play with 3 or 4 people. But it's a game that lots of people enjoy, quite independent of the task that you all are facing. Remember what we're going back to the session last time, we're appreciative of the challenges that you face and that your children face. And that what we want to do is to say there's some ways to help them develop these executive functions that can be fun and that are things that are not just for people who have challenges with executive function. It's things that many people do, and it's a way that all of us develop our executive functions. All children develop their executive functions through interactions with the environment in school and with family members and with peers at some point. And this is the type of thing that people developed before there was as much cognitive psychology research to talk about executive function and how it's compromised in different situations. People have made up games like 20 questions. Now for younger children, you make it simpler. You say, the game is, what am I thinking of? Or what did I see, you know, looking out the window? And then you add a big clue. I'm thinking of an animal with big ears and a small tail. So that gets them imagining 2 things here important about executive function. They're thinking about what's in your mind. So that's another aspect of executive function. And then they're thinking of with categories, right? I'm an animal. Okay, it's an animal. They're thinking about, oh, big ears and a small tail. So what goes together? So that's a game, and you can do that in the car when you're traveling. You can do it when you're folding laundry. Whoops. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, so there's that game. We don't have enough time for me to go into all the other games I want to go into, but these are ones that have been around for quite a while. And I don't know if you can circulate this somehow for people, Jose, but these are links on YouTube for free videos that tell you how to play red light, green light game. And there's music and you play the video, and there's little Muppet figures playing the game with you and your kids, and it's in with music. Another one, though, that you can also get online, but you can play together with your kids. And it has a version for older children too, which I'll tell you. So this is a game where it's a little jingle song: touch your head, shoulders, knees and toes, touch your head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. And so you do that, and the children are paying attention and having some memory and touching these different parts of their body. And then it gets a little more complicated when you add more parts: head, shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ear, mouth, and nose. So that's the basic one. It's sustained attention. It's fun. Certain age groups, you can do it with them, or you can have the video do it and have them play with it. But then you can make new rules, and you're going to see we're coming back to some of the same themes of cognitive flexibility and fun. So and memory, adding it onto this. So here is the twist: when I say touch your head, you have to touch your shoulders. And try it yourself. Imagine, you can see how much more difficult it makes, right? You're still going to sing head, shoulders, knees and toes. But when they hear head, they have to touch shoulders. And when they hear shoulders, they have to touch head. So we've got memory, heightened attention, and response inhibition, all built in with that simple, and cognitive flexibility, all that. Now, in some families, you're going to have older children who are the ones who have more trouble with their executive functions. And if they're so inclined, they can be the one that teaches this to younger siblings. They can be leading the game. And so when, by virtue of leading the game with their younger sibling, they are exercising their own executive function at the same time. And while it might seem too childlike to them, just a basic form of head, shoulders, knees and toes, if they actually feel that what they're doing is helping our younger sibling do it, they will feel more comfortable, and it will be good for their executive function. And so I've already talked about this: changing the rules of the games, cognitive flexibility, alternating the rules. So when you look for green cars, but then taxis, and then back to green cars. So you're going back and forth, more cognitive flexibility. You can also play pretend games, and older kids can really help set these up and for the family, and assign roles. So that, and then you can use for cognitive flexibility other things, because we make a little play and somebody has to make a phone call, but we don't have a phone. So we're going to use a water bottle to pretend the phone. And we're going to pretend that the magazine is a restaurant menu, if that's part of the game. And you're going to use a sock for a hat. So you put it on your head and it's funny, but you know the sock represents a hat. And you make up a game with a child, a little make-believe game. And this comes right out of some classroom lessons developed by Elaine Diamond. What's that called? A whole program for children for developing executive function skills. And what I want to do before we run out of time is show you one more thing and then go to a couple more general concepts. Now, this is one that we use in our program that can be done in school and can be done at home. It can be done with 2 people. It can be done with a larger group. And it can be modified for older children. And what it is that imagine you and a child face to face. So look at me and you're looking back and forth at me, and I'm going to would be standing up rather than sitting down. And we're going to just clap on the beat together. So that's sustained attention. And you'll see if you clap and then you make it faster, you feel body feels different, and then slow it down together. And you all have, and you both together have a feeling of a little calmer and self-control by slowing it down. That's the first thing that comes out of this exercise. But what it's really about beyond that is you learn to stay on the beat, and then we make a pattern out of it that can be as simple or as complex as we want. So it may go using your hands and your feet. So it could go clap, clap, left foot, right foot, clap, clap, left foot, right foot, clap, clap, left foot, right foot. So you do that simple pattern, and then you can do it and say, okay, you've done it. Now I'm not going to say what you have to do. We're just going to do it. So now they've got memory. So you've already done that simple pattern. Clap, clap, left, right, clap, clap, left, right. And then you don't say it, but you just do the motion. So now they're having to use their concentration and their memory. Then a next step, more complicated, is it goes clap, clap, left, right, clap, clap, right foot, left foot. So now there's a little more attention, a little more self-control, because you're not just simply repeating clap, clap, left, right, clap, clap, left, right. It's clap, clap, left, right, clap, clap, right, left. Now, this can be done for any age because you can make the pattern as complicated as you want. You can make it as long as you want. You can make it interpersonal. This is a wonderful part with children who are developing their executive functions, where we say, okay, we're going to share the pattern. And you say to the child, do you want to do the clap, clap on your hands or the step, step with your feet? And they pick it. So if we just, let's say they want to do the clap, clap. So you look at them and they do clap, clap, and then you do left step, right step. They do clap, clap, you do left step, right step. So you can see how we can easily add simple little additional challenges to executive function that you can modulate the difficulty of this easily for your children. Now, what we do in schools, what we encourage is that, especially with the older kids, is they can make all sorts of funny movements. It doesn't have to be just clap, clap, right foot, left foot. It can be clap, clap, jump, clap, clap, spin, you know, or clap, clap, crazy movement, whatever, or dance step. And then we're talking for older kids, real dance moves. And if they like to dance and for whatever, and if it's better than, easier to communicate than some other means, you can either have them make the dance moves, or you can get dance videos. And watching and going in step by step with a dance video together can be a great game of fun for you. And here again, we can use the procedure of an older child who's trying to develop their executive function, teaching and playing this game we just talked about with their younger siblings. So those are examples of things to do, but what else can we put on the schedule? And we make a schedule. This is another thing not to forget about: quiet time together. And meditation is very useful for parents and for children. And you can get guided meditation videos on YouTube that you can follow. And I think I've covered these general principles and the key takeaways, but remember, executive function is important in so many activities. That's why we have these different opportunities to train it and use it and practice and strengthen it. Always dial down the pressure, you know, make it simple, try and make it successful and fun. Now, I'm just going to describe again the next session, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions now. But the next session is all about your ideas, what you've tried that you can share with each other via this Beyond Access series, where you send them in to me, your ideas, and then we go ahead and share them. And questions that you have now that we don't get to, send them to me by email, and then I'll actually make slides with your questions on them. And that's what our next session is going to be about on March 23rd. So I guess we have 5 minutes for a few questions now, Jose.
absolutely. And I wanted to share with everyone a couple of a link to one of the resources that we have that we provide. You mentioned meditation, and so we provide a mindfulness yoga based service called Get Ready to Learn. We've partnered with the Get Ready Project. So every week they put in new resources, upload new resources to their YouTube page. So they're usually no more than 20 minutes. So if you need something to help get moving or to have a mindful moment or to take a bit of meditation, tap into those resources that we're providing to you all, folks.
That's great. That's great. And make it part of the schedule again. You know, this would be in the schedule, some quiet time for all of us together, because we all need it, not just them. You know, you put it that way.
There's a couple of questions in here about that are trying to get to accountability with checklists. What are the kind of things you do when you have checklists created? You've involved with the child with the creation of the checklist, but items are still not getting done. How do you bring in accountability to the conversation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's hard. I understand, and I don't have an easy answer for that. And again, you have to feel your way with your child. What is it going to be? How much it, and the mixture of options are to explain why it's important, to get them to help you make the checklist, to have the checklist items be things, say, on the schedule. So as Jose said he did with his nephew, when they know that when they finish the thing on the checklist, there'll be a reward afterwards. And then you can, I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving rewards for completing the checklist. So we've got the questions. Consequences, you know, has to do more, sounds more like it has to do with, you know, punishment or loss. And there is a place for that, certainly in parenting. I don't want to, it's hard for me to give advice here or answer, because it depends so much on each child, you know, and their age, what the balance would be between consequences, which would be taking away things that they like. And certainly those work, you know. You know, you're not going to have your cell phone. I'll turn it off. You know, you're not going to have access to this or that unless you do these checklists. And I'm not doing it because I'm angry at you. I'm doing it because this is what's necessary for you to be happy and successful. These are some skills you need. And I'm sorry, you know, I'm your parent, but that's what my job is. And I'm going to do it because I love you. And that, but the way I know how to do it, unless you can do it some other way, is that you're going to have some consequences if you don't do it. So frame your consequences that way. That is one of the things that they say, that sort of more patient. If you have the patience and you can care for your own needs enough, you don't just get angry when the child does something or, you know, disappoints you, but you're able to be able to explain what the lesson is about it, you know, why this is important and why we have to do it again. And that, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to, you know, skip this. You know, if we don't get beyond this, we're going to be stuck here. And if we're stuck here for, you know, for the next month, we're going to be stuck here for the next month. The sooner we can get by this, whatever you call it, you know, my peculiarity, but I think it's important, the sooner we're going to be able to get to you're having the things that you want and get your cell phone back or other privileges.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it really, before it gets to the point of consequences, it's really about sticking to that structure that's being built, and how schedules and checklists go hand in hand, and really having that conversation with the child around not only the things that need to get done today, right, but also the associated rewards for getting things done. And then just like knowing that, like, hey, I know you really wanted to play video games today, but your math homework isn't done yet, and we can't do that until we finish this type of situation.
Yeah, here's the schedule, here's the checklist. That's what we got to just check them off, check it off, and then we'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you prioritize different sets of goals and checklists, right? So if a child gets easily overwhelmed, you know that the child has one base of priorities set by the school, their academic or whatever it might have you, and then they have their different home goals and checklists. So, there's a responsibility of getting homework done, there's responsibility of doing those things, but then there's also like take out the garbage,
Right.
clean, those kinds of things. How do you balance that out?
Okay, so you may want to discuss that. Is that a fair question to ask with their teacher, by the way, to how to balance that out?
Absolutely. I think that
Yeah.
those are a great way to talk to your teacher and say, hey, and when we're talking about executive functions here, we're talking about reinforcing IEP goals, right? So
Yes, exactly.
we should always have those things hand in hand and say, parents should always feel free to reach out to their teachers and say, how can I reinforce those things? Are these things a great way
And then,
of
yeah, and then can you give us, I would like to be able to concentrate on making some priority for these things at home, because it's going to make home life easier. I think that they can do them, which will develop their executive functions. It'll make them feel like they're more productive, active participants in family life. And the only way I can get them to do that, I think, is going to require to deprioritize, to cut back a little bit on the time and effort that they're going to do in some school stuff. Is that all right? And which school stuff should we cut back on? Now, I don't want to upset the teachers here, but that's my answer, actually.
No, and I think that this is a really good plug for your next session. And we want to hear from all of you. What's working for you all? What are some things that you have questions about for this next Year Experts 2 session? So I know we're a little over time. So
Yep.
Dr. Wexler, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing information. Thank you everyone who stuck around. I've just dropped the link into the chat for the survey. You'll also get an email with the link as well. So please take a minute and fill that survey out. It really helps us plan for the future sessions. And then, as always, tomorrow you're going to get an email with 3 things. You're going to get the email is going to have the link to the recording of this session. I know a number of you have asked for how to access it, so you'll get an email with the link to that. You'll get the email to the survey, and then it'll also have a link to the next session for you to register. Share that with friends and anyone who you think might be interested. But until then, thank you everyone for joining. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, all.